Hi, I'm Chris Aguilar with Unite Ellis. Today I'm interviewing Rebecca Walls, Executive Director of Unite DFW, who's going to be talking about flourishing and how we can overcome the loneliness epidemic through infrastructure within DFW and beyond. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, tell us your name, kind of a little bit about what you do, and what got you so passionate about flourishing.
Yeah. So, like you said, I'm Rebecca Walls. And I founded Unite DFW about 17 years ago. So, I've been doing this for a long time. And I'm glad you brought up flourishing. We have been talking about that as a way to describe our vision for 10 years since Harvard first published the framework. And the reason I'm passionate about it is I feel like that word describes life as it was meant to be lived. And I feel like God gave me a mission to figure out how to build infrastructure across DFW that would help everybody work together to allow DFW to flourish.
So you mentioned Harvard about 10 years ago. How did you get connected to all of that?
So I kind of sit under a guy named Eric Swanson, who's an author and a coach for people that do what I do around the country. And he's always exposing us to either, thought leaders in the space or different experts, different ways to look at what we're doing. And he was the one that 10 years ago, as soon as Harvard published that framework, I think he realized, hey, this gives us something really tangible to use to describe what we're trying to get at in terms of what he was calling city transformation and how to measure it. So that's how I first heard about it, was my mentor, Eric Swanson.
Awesome. And so how did Harvard go about doing this study? Like why did they take this as like a research project?
Yeah, I actually don't know the origin story as to why they did it, but what they did 10 years ago was first study a group of people in America. So I think they just wanted to find out, as we talk about well-being, what are the dimensions of that, and what's a helpful framework that really everyone can use to get on the same page about that and do their part towards that. And so 10 years ago, what they ended up publishing was, from this study that they were doing in America, what they're finding about what does it look like for humans to flourish, and came up with the framework of the 6 domains, which that part isn't that different from other well-being frameworks. But there are things like mental and physical health, relationships, financial stability, meaning and purpose, things like that. There's 6 of them. So the other part of the framework that I think is a little bit unique to them is what they call pathways. They've identified 4 universal pathways by which humans experience holistic flourishing. And those are family, school, work, and religious community. And those are the places where we spend the most amount of time, and we are around people that can basically grow to love us and care about our flourishing. In fact, I say, if you say you love somebody, then you should care about all those aspects of their life. And if you don't, then I would really question if you actually do love that person.
Yeah.
So those pathways give us the opportunity to kind of be around people who, if they notice we're not flourishing, they can help us do whatever they need to kind of help us get back to a place of at least stability, and then ideally flourishing in those ways.
So you talk a lot about flourishing, obviously. Can you give us a working definition and why the research in flourishing still matters today?
So I just like to use life as it was meant to be lived, or life as God designed it to be lived even. There is a more formal definition, but that one feels like it resonates with everybody. it is self-defined. So I'm not going to define for you what flourishing looks like to you. It's really up to you to say, I am not worried about my finances. I have, what I need to live and comfortably, whatever that is for you. So I'm not going to say you have to make a certain amount, or, you have to have some kind of ratio of whatever. So it's really up for each individual person to define what that is for them. There's indicators that, the government might say, here's the living wage for this
Right.
area. And, so those are things that we can use to kind of tell us where some areas might be that we can focus as a community. But nobody's trying to define what flourishing is for each individual person. So a couple of things on your great question about why does it matter. First, I want to say that I think it was around 2021, Baylor University connected with Harvard, and they loved the framework, but they said, if we're going to call this human flourishing, this can't just be American. This has got to be global. So they set out to find some other partners that wanted to do a global flourishing study. And so they found funding and partners to do it, and they launched a 5-year longitudinal study to study this globally, and we're right in the middle of it right now. And it is basically the kind of academic research that says, here's what the state of being is right now. But Baylor actually set up an institute for global human flourishing to do applied research. So to take the framework and what they're learning from the state of flourishing across the globe, and then how do we move the needle on that? How do we take a person from where they are today to moving them towards whatever their definition of flourishing is in all the different domains? So I think the reason it's important is all of us, I think, innately understand when we're not flourishing.
Right.
And if we're talking about life as it was meant to be lived, and we talk to people about, God loves you and we want to pray for you, we love you, then we should be able to come alongside basically the people that we love. And if we say we love our neighbors, we should be able to come alongside our neighbors and help them when they recognize I'm not okay. So I think it's very important. I think it's key to life, like I said, as life as it was meant to be lived, not just that each one of us is flourishing ourselves, but that if we say we love others, that we are doing our part to help others flourish. And that's the way we show our love. So the reason this research is important in this framework is it really just gives us a way to be the most human and to play our role as humans in the well-being of others.
Yeah, I love that. So how does Unite DFW work infrastructurally to help make this life as it was meant to be lived reality a reality?
Yeah. So I like to say we have a small but important role. We believe that every person and every organization was created for a purpose that relates to the flourishing of others. So in our interpersonal relationships, that means that God has put you in the life of your family, your coworkers, your church members, and the neighbors around you. So he means for you to love those people. And so we want to equip people to do that well.
Yeah.
So that means if somebody you love is struggling with mental health or finances, that you would be able to access resources that would help you help them.
Yeah.
And similarly, organizations were created for a purpose. I mean, every organization has a vision and mission and maybe a purpose statement, I don't know, but more the idea of what they were created for. And we want to find out what that is, because those vary organization to organization. There's patterns basically within sectors of what kind of the overarching purpose is of an organization. So that gives us a hint to start with and kind of how they operate. But we're really trying to find out what is each organization created to do that relates to the flourishing of others. And then how do we connect all of them so that they're able to play their part and everybody knows what their part is. So they're referring people to them. They're leaning on them for their expertise. And really they're just creating a support system across the whole community that helps everyone flourish holistically. So DFW is a big place, as you know, better than anybody. There's 8.7 million people in
a lot of people.
the DFW region. And so God gave me this ridiculous size vision 17 years ago, like I mentioned. And for the first, 15 years of it, I guess, I was just looking for people that felt called to this kind of work and finding out, okay, what geography do you feel called to? So maybe it was, my little community here, or maybe it was a city, or maybe it was a county. And I was just saying, okay, great, we'll make a note of that. I'll send everybody your way that I come across in that area. And here's the network we want to connect you into for support. But it wasn't until COVID hit that I realized, oh my goodness, I should have really set up more of a kind of a hierarchy just for the pure support aspect of it. Because when 2020 happened, I had 20 of these region champions is what I called them. And I was like, I can't support 20 people when the world got turned upside down, and they all have jobs, because that's really what we're dealing with is people who are connecting with others on a volunteer basis. Like they don't have to collaborate. So it was at that point that we implemented our county infrastructure. So we break DFW down into counties first, and we're looking for people that feel called to do this at the county level. And then part of their job is to identify city champions underneath each county. And then the city champions are looking for people that want to take responsibility for the flourishing in their community. So that takes the 8.7 million people, breaks it down all the way to the community level, which on average across DFW is about 2,500 families in a community. I know that would vary county to county depending on how rural it is and all that, but that's kind of an average across DFW. So that's the geographic part of the infrastructure. But people also feel called to different issue areas, or in the flourishing framework, they're called domains of flourishing. So maybe your organization addresses mental health or physical health. Or maybe you as an individual feel passionate about, financial stewardship or whatever. So the issue or topical aspect of it, we are looking to build collaboration around those different topics. So the third aspect of the infrastructure is sectors. Like the flourishing framework calls them pathways. So we can start there. So the family, school, work, and religious community. Under work is where the rest of the sectors show up. So we want to provide support for the churches and the schools, those pathways, but then also government, business, healthcare. And so depending on which sector an organization is in, or depending on which sector an organization wants to engage or support, or an individual, then that gives us a third way to kind of build the infrastructure and really provide that support for individuals and leaders.
And obviously, we're one of your Unite counties. I know for us, we've identified mental health, military, and housing as some of those topic-specific ways that needed some gaps filled. What are some areas in some of the other counties that you guys are seeing in which are topics that they're passionate about?
Yeah, I think the one we're seeing in Dallas right now is food. The November SNAP crisis back last November really drew attention to that, I think, for the whole country, of how many families are dependent on the government to feed their family kind of throughout the month. That's not what we want. We're not trying to create dependence on then, okay, now you're dependent on a nonprofit or a church for food. So we don't want that, but we don't believe anybody should be hungry in America. So really partnering with the local food pantries, churches, nonprofits that do other things where they're dealing with people that do have a gap in food at the end of the month, and maybe they don't have access to the food pantries, don't have access to reasonably priced food supply. We have built partnerships to kind of come in and fill that gap for them. So the team has put in a lot of work there and really just trying to bring pieces together that exist already out there. So really proud of that work, and they've done a great job. I think in Collin County, we're seeing a lot of different things, but one of the ones I'm really excited about that I think we're going to see a lot more of in the coming year or so is marriage and family.
Cool.
So we have our DFW marriage champion is actually in Collin County, and she has a network of churches and ministries throughout DFW, but really concentrated in Collin County. So I think that's one thing we're seeing there.
I love that.
I think, there's somebody passionate about every domain and really every challenge, because I think that's the way, again, God designed the world to work, is he's put that passion in each one of us, maybe some experiences in each one of us that gives us that passion, or maybe we just are born with it or wake up with it one day, I don't know. But wherever it comes from, that's what we're looking for, is what do people feel compelled to do? Because we got too much to do to try to be convincing people to do anything. So we're looking for, what do you really want to do, and how can we connect you with others to help make that happen?
And how does Unite and its collaborative work differ from other people's collaborative work?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think we're generally more holistic than most collaborative efforts. The fact that we have a DFW presence really allows that learning across all counties, cities, etc. So that's one aspect. And then the framework and the fact, I don't think I mentioned this a minute ago, we're actually partnering with Baylor's Institute for Global Human Flourishing. So the framework gives us something really concrete, and then Baylor's research gives us a way to measure the impact. And we're not going to keep that for ourselves. Any collaborative effort or any effort period that wants to use the framework, use the research, we welcome that. That's really what we want, and that's what they want. They partnered with the Center for Open Science to make that freely available to anybody who wants to use it. But we happen to be in a partnership with them, so we have that ability to really get guidance from them and have research-led projects when we get to that point. Right now, they're research-informed. So those are a couple of things I think. We really want to invite everybody to the table that wants to come. So we try not to create barriers for people. We are a Christian organization, but we're not limiting collaboration to just Christian organizations.
For sure.
But we do have some closely held beliefs that kind of shape the way we do things. So the idea of life as it was meant to be lived kind of infers some kind of created purpose, or I don't know, just some outside purpose having a meaning for life. And then the idea that people are called, I don't know that everybody sees it that way. They may just see, I feel passionate about it. But we feel like that passion comes from somewhere, and we're tapping into that basically. And then unity itself is something we believe that is almost like a secret sauce that God means for us to work together. And so that does inform the way we go about it. So I think that probably makes us show up a little differently than other collaborative efforts. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't know that we're really trying to say we're that different from other collaborative efforts. We want to lift every boat, basically.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
if people are collaborating around something, we want to shine a light on that and send people their way. We're not trying to duplicate any efforts, basically.
I love that. In a practical sense, you had mentioned like providing tools to people. What are some of those tools? Just a few of them.
Yeah. Well, my favorite is commonly known as COPE, the cost of poverty experience. I also like to call it a community experience because it really simulates more than just financial poverty.
For sure.
So by calling it a cost of poverty experience, I think we're automatically limiting the users of it, the people that would want to come to it, because a lot of people, to be honest, they don't want to know what it feels like to live in poverty. And they feel like, I'm passionate about this other stuff, so, that's not going to be my priority to spend time going to that. So calling it a community experience, I think, is more representative of what it actually is. It's simulating life, unfortunately, for people that are not flourishing. But what we do is we set it up by casting a vision for flourishing, explaining that we believe everybody was created for a purpose, and then saying, we're going to show you what it feels like to not be flourishing, and then we're going to talk about the different ways that people in our lives are experiencing some of these things and what each of us is doing to address that, and how if we do it together, we can really change the community.
Absolutely.
And I've never seen anything more effective at inspiring people to take action. And I don't think it's an accident. I think it's been proven that simulation is an effective way to inspire change and transformation.
Yeah, because essentially you're getting into the shoes of other people and seeing what it's like to live a different lifestyle.
Yeah,
for sure.
So we love to utilize that. Our biggest users of that, the biggest kind of customers that host it for their people, are schools and healthcare entities. Those are very commonly hosting these. So they would invite a group of like 100 of their staff to come into the room, and then we invite other stakeholders from the community, because we don't really like anybody to do it in isolation with their group. We like for people from all sectors to be able to come together and really have a shared experience and then come out of it wanting to collaborate.
For sure.
So that's one of those tools that we try to make available to everybody in the whole community, because again, everybody has a part to play.
Yeah.
So helping them see that is really fun and exciting. So it kind of ties to the meaning and purpose domain of flourishing, helping them see that meaning and purpose. And then from there, we give them other next steps that relate to specific domains like mental health, financial stability. So I've been working for the past year or so to identify what we call anchor partners for each of the domains and pathways. These are generally going to be national organizations, even global, that have resources available in each domain that really have capacity to scale, so that we can be offering training for organizations in each domain of flourishing or pathway, and resources to the people who are not flourishing in those areas. So they're not replacing any of the local nonprofits or churches or anything that are addressing those domains.
Yeah.
They're really just providing a layer of support that gives access to something, or gives access to resources for everybody, regardless of what's available in their community, because we know not everybody's flourishing. Like the indicators tell a clear story that everyone's not flourishing.
Right.
So what we're doing now isn't reaching everyone and helping everyone flourish. So how can we bring in kind of a blanket of support across the board that will empower more people to help their people flourish? So when you talk about tangible kind of tools that we're providing, we're really providing training around each domain.
Love that.
That would equip every individual to help the people that they feel called to help. And then one of our other tools, which I know you're very familiar with, is HelpFinder, helpfinder.org. That is our instance of a national platform It's a digital tool that makes every helping program in America accessible to people. And what we do with it is we try to look into our community and make sure everything is on there, because what automatically gets on there is all the incorporated nonprofits and government programs. So that leaves out anything churches are doing sort of off the radar often. They're doing ASL classes, they're doing food distributions, they're doing financial stewardship classes. I mean, they used to do exercise classes. They're probably doing all kinds of cool stuff that nobody really knows about unless they drive past their little marquee or their yard sign. So this gives us a way to make all those programs accessible to everyone in the community. And without us doing anything, the healthcare systems, the government entities are already using that platform to refer people to these programs in the community. So if we're not curating and making sure everything's on there, then they're missing out.
Yeah.
So when a healthcare entity is saying, okay, I'm dealing with a patient that's getting ready to leave the hospital and they don't have a family support system, I wonder who in the community could be at least a relational support.
Absolutely.
Like community. I don't know. I'm not seeing anything. There's so many things out there.
So many.
So we've just got to make stuff like that accessible. So that's another tool we're trying to make available. But eventually we want to get to the point where not only are all of these wonderful helping resources accessible and available to everybody, but we're spreading the word. Yeah. We're running campaigns across DFW. Eventually, the people like us in other places in America are running campaigns to say, hey, there's help available. You're not alone. We know things get hard sometimes. Here's where you can go to find anything you could possibly need to flourish. So I'm very excited. We're going to be doing a lot more of that starting this fall. So I'm excited to see how that turns out.
Very cool. So we've been talking a lot about flourishing and infrastructure. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about how those things attack this loneliness epidemic that we're discussing?
Yeah, I think the loneliness epidemic itself is kind of a commonly known thing. I think I don't know who all has kind of worked to raise awareness of that issue, but I'm seeing it at a national level. I think the outgoing Surgeon General back in January of 25 wrote a paper. So I'm not sure how much it was talked about before that, but that's when I really started hearing that at a national level. So I'm also seeing it at a global level. The World Health Organization is talking about it as a global health epidemic, basically a health crisis. So I think, the average person probably recognizes that loneliness certainly impacts our mental health, and that our mental health can impact our physical health. And when both of those get messed up, sometimes it affects our work, so our financial health. And the fact that we're lonely means something isn't quite right with our relationship. So you kind of see how it's all interconnected. So the first thing I think this infrastructure does is addresses loneliness for the leaders. Honestly, leaders, period, can often feel lonely. You've heard the expression, it's lonely at the top.
It is.
Because people don't really understand the burden you're carrying, and maybe don't understand your passion, don't understand your sense of kind of mission and that kind of thing. So the infrastructure itself provides a peer group for leaders that are either on parallel paths and missions or complementary, and gives them almost like a team to work with. And I've been to your events, and so I know how valuable that is to the Ellis County leaders. I feel like I compare it, when I talk about it to other people, I compare it to a Texas football game. It feels like a team spirit, which is so sweet. Like there's nothing that makes me happier than to see that. So that's one aspect. But The fact that this is a very pervasive crisis basically says that we're passing people on the street, we're even sitting next to people at work, we're going to church with people that secretly are feeling very lonely. So just because you're showing up in a place where there are people doesn't mean you aren't experiencing loneliness. And so that's an important aspect of, I think, what the Flourishing framework really tells us is that wherever you're going, wherever you're spending time, you really need to be making sure that people feel seen and that you're creating a safe space for people to open up with what they're dealing with.
For sure.
And I think even especially with the advances in AI, I think that's only going to increase loneliness because people are going to be perhaps turning to something like that for some kind of social interaction. I'm pretty sure that's going to leave a void.
Oh, yeah.
Because we weren't created to just interact with a computer that simulates human interaction.
Right.
None of us thinks that's human interaction. So I think in our spirits, we're going to recognize, okay, nope, this isn't quite doing the trick. It's false social interaction. So is social media. That's false social interaction. There's probably a more technical term for it, but that's not filling the need. So I think what we're dealing with is partly a result. It's a result of a whole bunch of things, but it's partly a result of the advancement of technology and the use of technology. And I'm not saying those things are bad. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're all bad. There's good things, but those of us who care about the flourishing of people need to recognize as those things are advancing, we need to be doing our part to utilize this research we have available to us and the knowledge of experts to say, we've got to mitigate the harmful effects of these things. And so that's really what this framework and the infrastructure do is they allow expertise to kind of rise up and be looking at things in a holistic way and then be addressing, whatever the gaps are, like you used that word earlier. I think that's a great word. So the loneliness epidemic, this calls for everybody to do their part. And one sector that was really called to act was the healthcare sector because they're calling it a health crisis.
For sure.
And one of the emerging practices I'm seeing from the healthcare sector is very exciting to the kind of work we're talking about. It's called social prescribing. So what this looks like is if you go to your healthcare provider and say, man, Dr. Smith, I am struggling. I feel like I'm having low energy, like I'm having trouble mustering up the energy to do the things I normally enjoy doing. I just don't feel like myself. I just don't know what's wrong with me. So, traditionally a healthcare provider might say, okay, first of all, maybe go see a specialist, a therapist, maybe in this case, and here's some prescription. Here's a prescription for you. Let's try to address that way. But the layer they're adding now is the social aspect. They're saying, okay, let's talk about your work setup. Are you leaving the house to go to work? Are you interacting with humans during the day in person? And then what's your work-life balance like? Are you making time for just enjoying time with family? Are you making time for doing things you're enjoying doing? And so they actually prescribe social interaction and prescribe especially social interaction that gets people either addressing a need they have or doing something they enjoy. And so the doctor might say, what do you enjoy? Let me find a group that's doing that in your area. Go do that for 2 months, come back and see me, probably along with therapy and medication. Yeah. So it's not like they're going to neglect those things, but this additional layer, I think, is critical to the healthcare sector responding to this health epidemic. So I'm very delighted that the healthcare sector is kind of this is emerging from them. And I'm delighted that Unite is being asked to provide professional development for the healthcare sector on things like this. So it's a real opportunity. But what I want to say to the other sectors is all of us have a role to play in a flourishing community. So take a page out of the healthcare sector book, because we also have the ability to do the same exact
100%.
thing, like listen and see people and refer them to places in the community that already are doing the things that they need, and especially the ones that are providing that social interaction. And I think especially for the churches, other religious communities, that's the very least we should be doing, is offering those spaces for people and then helping people find the one that's right for them, so that everyone
100%.
has a group of people that really knows them, loves them, sees them, and is there to help them flourish.
Love that. So in closing, if there's a listener that's in your area and wants to reach out, how does someone get connected?
So if they're in Ellis County, I would first encourage them to connect with you. So uniteellis.org is your website. There's one of you in 6 of our counties total in DFW. So if they go to unite-dfw.org, we can kind of direct them to the county that's appropriate. But we want to do this across the whole DFW region. There's 19 counties in the DFW region, so we've got a long way to go. So we're looking for people who want to see this happen in their county or their city or their community. And then also at the DFW level, we have the different issue groups and different sector groups. So going to unite-dfw.org is the best way. And there's a join us form on there where your listeners can basically say, here's the things I'm passionate about. Here's the area, the geography that I feel called to. We can basically connect them from there to different events that are going on and different resources that will help them do whatever it is they feel called to do.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, so much for joining us. And thank you guys for listening. Everything we do is resource coordination, whether it's for the family experiencing crisis or for the organization that needs some leadership development tools. We have the pathway for you to get the resources you need. So reach out to DFW, reach out to us. Let us help you any way we can. Thank you so much for joining us.